You muted yourself.
Oh my god, oh my god. Sorry guys. Welcome guys. We're here. It's Fight Fan TV Live. It's Elusive 2.0. It's Base the Kid, the Hardcore Casual. We're doing a collab show today. Thank you for joining us this evening. It's Danny Glover. Gonna introduce the guys. I'm sure you're familiar with them. If you're not, make sure you subscribe to their channels. It's Base the Kid, the Hardcore Casual, aka Base Stradamus, and we've got none other than Elusive 2.0, Raf Pereira. How you doing today, guys?
All good.
Got to unmute yourself, Raf. So
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
yeah.
I'm not bad, bro. How about yourselves? You guys good?
Yeah, man. All good, all good. So so it's been, a fantastic time for combat sports and boxing at the moment. We're going to talk about some of the fights. First of all, we've got to get into, the most recent show, Riyadh season, Undisputed. We had Artur Beterbiev versus Dimitry Bivol for the light heavyweight undisputed championship. Some say it was controversial. Some say, the right man won. Some say it is what it is. Could have gone either way. What's your thoughts on the fight? And what do you think about the post-fight reaction from the pundits and the fans? We'll start off with you, Base.
Yeah, look, I thought the fight was a tremendous fight. As I was saying a little earlier on, like, in terms of a fight whereby you've got two guys almost at the peak of their powers, like the level of the level of eliteness of them, the ability to nullify each other, and also to pick up on the tiniest of potential like openings that both guys managed to create. I thought it was a highly intriguing, a highly entertaining fight, very sort of tense. It was also the kind of fight where, even though not a huge amount happened every round, it was very suspenseful. It wasn't the kind of fight where you're just on your edge of your seat waiting for the knockout or something, but it was a fight, even though not a lot happened. There wasn't a big build up. There wasn't a massive, ruckus in the middle. I was still highly entertained and intrigued throughout. So yeah, it was a good advertisement for the sport of boxing. And as I said earlier on, I think it was the type of fight whereby I think it's the first time ever where I've looked at a fight and said there's literally no loser. Maybe there's one person that didn't get their hand raised, but there's actually like no loser in this fight, even though obviously someone gets an L in the column. But I really thought it was good, and I can't wait for it to possibly happen again.
Yeah, real talk. And Raf, what about yourself?
Yeah, I echo a lot of what Base said. I think, it lived up to expectations in terms of that 50-50-ness going in. We've seen in previous instances where that hasn't been the case. Terence Crawford, Errol Spence being case in point, but no shade intended, Danny. It's okay. But
no, Base loves that one. He loves it. He'll never let me live it down, but it's okay.
The thing is, Base, you may have seen actually, Daddy can't keep a straight face. When you talk about that fight, when anyone talks about that fight, you can see now. There you go. But no, it was a really good fight. I think in both instances, they ticked boxes that we weren't expecting beforehand. So beginning with Dimitry Bivol, as early as round one, the last 10 seconds of round one, he took it to Beterbiev and he initiated the exchange. And you would have thought going in that he'd be looking to box and move all night, but that wasn't the case. He took it upon himself to initiate the attacks and also try and recuperate lost ground. He wouldn't just concede the fact that Beterbiev was going to be dominating that center of the ring and having that level of ring generalship. He was trying to recuperate lost ground. But one thing Beterbiev did that shocked a lot of people was his spurts. Normally we see him quite balanced throughout the fight, but because Bivol applies very, very methodical pressure. What we saw was he'd take literal 1 minute, 2 minute periods off rounds, like I think round 10, it wasn't 9, it was 10, where he landed out of 34 power punches, he landed 1. And then the next round, he landed something like 20 out of 27. So very, very methodical thinking, right, I'm going to lose this round. I'm going to hedge my bets and then come out like, I've been blasted out of a cannon or something, and then really put forward a strong case for the next round. So overall, yeah, really intriguing fight. What Base said as well is 100% true about, there was no loser. And, I think he summed that up perfectly by saying, there's not anyone, okay, one person may not have had their hand raised, but both of their stock values for myself went up. I don't know if you guys feel similarly, but yeah, there's no loser.
Yeah. So, funny enough, that what Base said and you said kind of went into my next question, but I'll give my opinion on the fight. So, yeah, it was a very high level technical fight, and what I'm happy about is that the casuals, the ones who are normally into the rock'em sock'em crash bang wallop, normally a fight like that you would hear people complaining, oh, well, nothing's going on, oh, this is boring, but they was actually invested in it because there was so much intensity and you could see their minds both thinking, and it was so much suspense going on, as well as high level technicians going at it. They was actually enjoying the fight and engrossed in the fight, and they actually, I'm surprised they actually enjoyed it, because normally fights like that you hear complaints of. I saw a couple of people on tweet, oh, it didn't live up to my expectations, but it's like, all right, what did you expect both of them to do? They both of them, what they did, they was canceling each other out, and they both knew they couldn't fight each other the way they've been fighting everybody else, because they know each other. They both come from a Soviet background. They was both on the same team. Like Bivol, he normally does that tap, 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 that fencing front foot tap step thing before he lets off an attack. In this fight, he didn't do it. He was much more planted rather than that Ryu Ken in and out type of movement, because Artur Beterbiev brought in their old Soviet Russian coach, who obviously trained them both. So, they both knew. And then also, I found out that Dimitry Bivol brought in a lot of sort of Russian coaches and guys like that. So he didn't have the Diaz brothers in his corner like he usually does. So it was a very Soviet style affair. So yeah, that was very good. I had it 115, 114 on my scorecard, but there was a few swing rounds, as everyone's kind of admitted that. So depending on where you give those swing rounds to, you could end up with another winner, or you could end up with a draw. So there was a 10-10 round I gave in round 6, and had I've given that to Beterbiev, it would have been a draw. But there was another couple of swing rounds where, had I've given it either other way, who knows? But it was a close affair. There was no robbery. I think a lot of people like to throw that word around too loosely. It's like a new little buzzword for everyone to get upset about and rant and go But yeah, and I hope to see the rematch. But as both you said, it kind of leads into the next question. Well, you kind of answered it, Base. Has Bivol stock risen in defeat? And but what you can say is, what I will ask is, why do you feel that his stock has risen in defeat?
Yeah. The thing is, it's like, I don't know if I can say a stock's risen. To me, it's just high. It was high before, and it's high now. Maybe some people would have looked at Bivol as, oh, okay, like, he's really good, but how good is he? Because like his best, like the best victories that people sort of give him the most plaudits for is Canelo and probably Zerda Ramirez. Because one's naturally much bigger than him, and the other one he's much bigger than, but was at the time the pound for pound #1 star in the world, and it was unquestionable that Canelo was #1 at the time. And he's obviously employed and did in those fights. He actually, to me, fought those fights a little bit different than he started actually fighting the rest of them. With most of his other fights, he wasn't on the back foot, but he was very much more that pure boxer. But in the Canelo fight midway through, all the way like Deserto Ramirez, then obviously Lyndon Arthur and Zanad, he started becoming more of the front foot aggressor, like that pressure in front foot pure boxer style. And you started to see a lot more of it more recently. Like he would never like run from people. He'd always stay with them. But this was the first couple of times I really started to see him, proper like engaging, proper pushing that pace and mentally trying to fatigue other people, similar to kind of what Usyk does. But yeah, I think it's because he silenced the doubters of, okay, well, what is he? Is he like, is he just gonna run? No, he didn't run. He sat and he stood his ground when he needed to, traded when he needed to, was able to take punishment when necessary, had an elite level guard, which was, for the most part, I mean, it was only penetrated, I guess, by the fact that his hand was getting pushed onto his own face for the most part, but didn't manage to take anything clean throughout the night. And anything that really did kind of get through, he was able to weather the storm, come through, and then still fire back later on. So I think it was a case. It was his stock kind of went up in that sense that people knew that he was for real, that he was the real deal, taking on someone who's obviously 20-0, 20 KO. So you're waiting for that KO. And it's like he stopped the KO. And not only did he stop the KO, he's got, over half of the boxing world and the casual world believing that he was unjustly done by in terms of the scorecards, not just in terms of that 116, 112, but in terms of he should have actually won the fight. Many people around the ring felt that from what I've heard. A lot of people on social media think that, even though obviously there's a equal number the other way, but it was just because it was such an evenly contested fight, your stock can't drop. And I feel like that's the reason why he's come out with so much credit, and why Beterbiev has also come out with credit, although maybe not as much. He may be, if they was both here, then even though they've both riven, I think maybe Beterbiev rose slightly less because people felt his performance wasn't as impressive of the two, but they were still, yeah, like I said, neither dropped.
And to yourself, Raf, why is it? Because I saw you do sort of a post on why you feel Bivol's stock has risen. Why is that?
Yeah, I think, you have to look at it like a net effect, the pros, the cons, and then weigh up what outweighs what. I think for me, there were 3 points that went Bivol's way and 2 that went against him. So the first being his way, he's the first person to end Artur Beterbiev's 100% KO record and go 12 rounds with him. So inherently, that's going to boost your stock a little bit. Number 2, he went against the pre-fight script. The narrative going in is that Bivol's the boxer, Beterbiev's the puncher who could box to a degree, but not quite that same proficiency as Dimitry Bivol. And so with Beterbiev, he actually initiated more of the exchanges than Artur did. And that's not something that I forecasted before. I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't have thought going into that fight that Bivol would have been the guy initiating exchanges. Responding, yeah, but initiating, I wouldn't have thought that. And definitely not as early as round 1, where he'd won the round. It wasn't a case of he was badly hurt or the momentum was slipping away from him. It was very much of his own accord, where he decided to himself, I'm going to take a chance here and show I'm going to stand my ground. So I'd say that's point number 2. The third one that went his way was the fact that, and Base touched on this when he said, about the guard, he took shots, but he took the sting out of them. He rode them, but the ones he took, he swallowed them and he got back up. So I'd say those are the 3 main points in his favor, and they outweigh these 2. The 2 that go against him are, he's now lost his undefeated record, so he's no longer an unbeaten boxer. So inherently, that's going to drop your stock value, and maybe cancel out what we said about being the first person to take Beterbiev the distance. That's then cancelled out. It's like a net effect of zero overall, with the plus minus element. So, and the second one being, he couldn't establish ring generalship for any meaningful amount of time in the fight that would have won him a round for that principle alone. And what I mean by that is, every time he tried pushing Beterbiev back, it wasn't sustained. Beterbiev would be within around about a 20 to 30 second window, he'd be occupying that center of the ring position. And so as a result of that, it, from the optics standpoint, you know, just viewing the fight as a judge, if everything else is pretty level in a round and one guy is occupying that center of the ring, and every time the other guy, Bivol, tries pushing him back, he can't, that's going to work against him. So I think overall his stock value rose, but not massively. Because like I said, there's 3 points, and then 2 going the other way down. So a net overall rise, but not massively.
Okay, that was a great analysis there and summary of that. Let's get through some of the chat. Let's see what some people have to say. Shout out to Untraceable Don. Shout out to SA1 Boxing Sajid. Bivol started the rounds well, then tapered off, allowing Artur to close the rounds better. Jade DeFreitas. I still rate Bivol. How he bounces back is important and will tell us what type of fighter he is going to be. Well, I don't think he's mentally fragile. He doesn't strike me as that guy, so I think he'll be just fine. Big up Ryan Hutchinson. I hope you're not related to Willie, but okay. Artur clearly won. I'm glad the judges got it right. Calm down, please. Calm down. Great content and always, Danny. Gifts are great. Thank you very much. And shout out to Raf. He's the one who suggested this. We was going to do it in the studio, but we've done it virtual. So hope you're enjoying, guys. Raf, your explanation has made me less upset.
Unintended.
Shout out to Untraceable. And Bivol gets a rematch, right? Well, it seems that both guys have talked about a rematch and are happy to do one, so I imagine it will happen. They both got $10 million each, so I'm sure the money will be right. Even though they don't, those two don't strike me as guys who are in it for the money. But everyone wants to get paid. You know what I mean? No one goes to work because they love the job, but there is some jobs worth in the workplace, but they still want the money. They still want to get paid at the end of the day by payroll. Do you know what I mean? So I'm sure the carrot will be good enough. I feel both guys' stock has risen, and I think with the general public, because I'm very happy that Artur did somehow get this injury and it did get postponed, because them being on the 5 versus 5, they kind of got overshadowed and eclipsed, and I don't think the fight would have done as well on that card. I think it's good that they had it as the main event, like standalone main event. And also another thing where normally everyone talks about, I want to see some arguments, I want to see it get heated, I want to see some pushing and shoving. These guys just stayed in character. They didn't let anybody draw them out of character. Eddie Hearn, he tried a last ditch attempt, calling him arrogant. Beterbiev decided to sort of have a little banter with it with Dev. He's like, why you want to start? But because obviously his English is not the best, Eddie's took it as like he's rattled him when he was actually just trying to have a laugh. But it's good. But in both of them, they both got a lot of respect for each other. And I think the rematch, everyone will be a lot more invested in it. So yeah, I'll look forward to that. One person who did have a lot of critique and thinks he's now who sees some vulnerability in Artur Beterbiev is a man who fought just last month called Mr. Edgar Berlanga. He had this to say: I would stand toe to toe with Artur and knock him out. No IQ, no head movement. Raf, what do you make of that?
The Canelo fight is the benchmark people are going to use for, Edgar coming out and saying something like that. And you get the feeling that, for me, he actually exceeded expectations in that fight, but not in a meaningful way that would make you think against Beterbiev, a division up as well, that his power is going to carry that much more and have that much of an effect. But that's all I've got to say on that, really.
Yeah. And Base, what's your thoughts on Edgar's tweet? Did you see that at all?
I saw the tweet. I mean, look, to be honest, it's not even worth talking about. Like, he is not on any type of level to even have that kind of confidence. I mean, he got dropped in the third round off of a left hook that the entire world saw coming by Canelo Alvarez. And you want to talk about no IQ and no head movement. Well, your head got moved. You know, like Raf said, the expectation he exceeded was the fact he managed to see the final bell, and I think that's only because Canelo just got tired of him running. He was running on the back foot after the first four rounds. So yeah, that fight will not end well for him if he was to take it. But you know what? If once the rematch is done, I would quite happily let Beterbiev do that as his little side mission. I think you wouldn't even have to train for that fight. So go for it. Get the money, extra money for the kids and the family, and then look to better objects ahead. But yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that he must have been at a really good party, and he was getting turned up and lit, and he decided to write that, during the middle of the night. That's what I thought. He can't be serious. He didn't stand toe to toe with Canelo, so I can't see how he would, dare stand toe to toe with someone like Artur Beterbiev. There's even other guys in the division in 175 who I don't believe he would stand toe to toe with. I don't think he'd stand toe to toe with David Benavidez or David Morrell, Joshua Buatsi. So and the Yard. So I don't think he would be standing toe to toe with Beterbiev. But I just take it he was at a really good party. So yeah, we'll leave that there. One controversial bit I saw was that after the fight, there was that gentleman called Ramzan Kadyrov who entered the ring. Everyone's talking about him. I don't really know that much about him. I saw him years ago on a Ross Kemp show when Ross Kemp went out to Russia to do with he's against people who have an alternative lifestyle, and he tends to want to get rid of them out of his country and area and sort of eradicate them by any means necessary. But it seems a lot of people was like shocked to see him, even though I have seen him with guys like Khabib and a few UFC fighters, people around that Dagestan, Chechnya region. So what is it? What's made him so controversial, apart from obviously what I already know about him against people from the LGBT community? And also, why is it that a lot of fighters seem to be friends with him from combat sports, especially those who are, very religious and stuff like that, and seem quite pure-hearted? We'll go with Raf first, because
Okay, he's on the FBI's most wanted list. He's one of the most wanted men in the world by the American government. And with Kadyrov, it was something that not just Beterbiev, other fighters have been influenced by in recent years. Like, for example, Khamzat Chimaev is an associate of his, and he's now not allowed to enter the USA in the UFC. He has to have his fights in Saudi Arabia or Abu Dhabi in Fight Island because he's not allowed into America. But ex-UFC fighters who've been friends with Ramzan Kadyrov have been murdered. Their families have been tortured to death. And there's a track record on Instagram Live, actually, 2 months ago on Khamzat's Instagram Live. He made a threat to one of the people that commented, and he said, the translation from Russian was, "I've dealt with many Satans in my time. I'll have no problem finding your family as well." And then they cut off the live, and people are asking Khamzat about that, but Khamzat denied to comment because when you're that interconnected and interrelated with people of that magnitude, this goes beyond what Saudi are in control of as well as at that event, well above Turkey's head, because Chechnya and Saudi Arabia have recently signed, as recent as it was within the last 12 months, a strategic partnership whereby they're now working as allies, and they're going to begin trading and also sharing information about weaponry and arms in that respect. So Kadyrov being there wasn't so much in Saudi Arabia a surprise, but given that it's an American network that was televising the event, and on the broadcast, someone in the ring who's in the top 10 most wanted by the FBI in the world for dictators, that in any other sport would completely jeopardize your sponsorships. You'd lose Sky Sports, you'd lose Showtime, you'd lose HBO. But in a sport like boxing, that's the red light district where everything goes. Welcome to boxing. This is a sport where, and I think the red light district comparison is a good one because everyone knows what happens there. It's just, it's a public rule in that sense. It's a public secret where everyone knows what happens, and it's just accepted as standardized practice. So, yeah. But the second thing you asked was about the association with, I think, Khabib and other fighters with Ramzan. In that area of the world, it's actually very difficult to say no, because, like I said, this goes well beyond MMA, well beyond combat sports. Vladimir Putin, when Khabib beat Conor McGregor, gifted him $20 million in real estate property, and Khabib could not deny that. If he'd done that, there would have been big repercussions, let's say, potentially for him and his family. So once you're affiliated with someone like that, you very much have to do what they like. Otherwise, you could be in a lot of trouble. I'll give you an example. With Ramzan Kadyrov's son, he had a boxing match at age 10, and he was knocked down by the other fighter, another kid. They stopped the fight, told the other kid to go to the corner, began doing a count for the other kid, and then afterwards, that kid was made to apologize for knocking down Kadyrov's son, and they announced Kadyrov's son as the winner. And one of the family members of that child's extended family disappeared within 72 hours of that fight happening. So this is very much something that goes beyond combat sport. And when people have, we're talking about the most influential men in the world, Vladimir Putin, he's in the top 5. You don't say no to people like that, This is very much above boxing's head, where if they say, right, you're going to do this, you will do that, because it goes beyond that. And yeah, that's my 2 cents. But over to you and Base.
Yeah, because I think he's got a gym out in the Chechnya region.
That's correct.
Where he's got boxing and MMA. He's also got like a team of fighters, as you said, Chimaev and a couple of other guys and stuff like that. So he seems to be a fan of combat sports like boxing and stuff. So that's why it's not the most surprising to see him at an event. But then, how did he get into Saudi undetected if he's wanted by the FBI?
Because they signed a strategic partnership, Saudi and Chechnya, a year ago, and he's their leader. He's the president, prime minister equivalent. So he, if that had been a Western country, then yeah, there'd probably been restrictions, but they're an ally of each other now. And so, yeah, there we go.
Okay. Base, do you know much about Ramzan and what's
No, sorry, that's above my pay grade. That's above my level of. I'm sticking to the boxing, mate.
Okay.
Base has got a lot better taste. He doesn't, go into the assassinations and the whole political stuff. He's got a lot better taste, so he's doing the right thing.
Yeah. Another fight on the card, which has obviously caused a lot of controversy, is the ending of the Ben Whittaker versus Liam Cameron fight. We've seen there's been a press release of one person's injury on the card. There hasn't been a press release on Ben's. And what's your thoughts on the fight as it was going? And what's your opinions on the injury and the the aftermath reaction from many people online, base?
Yeah, look, I mean, the fight started well enough for Ben Whitaker. He was doing well in the first 2 rounds. The third round looked like it will start there. I still feel like he won the third round, but it was like all of a sudden it looks like it's starting to change a little bit. And the difference with obviously this fight compared to the others is this is like the first fight where we've seen Ben Whitaker not be able to stay in character, or at least choose not to, be in the character that we know him to be. And it's almost kind of telling where you look at it and you say, well, you said that this guy was easy work. Like, so why would you not be able to keep in character? Why is he having so much success so early on? And then you get to a point where Ben is starting to sit in the pocket from like the middle to end of the third round, and then in round 4 and round 5, like he's riding a lot of shots, sort of blocking some, but he's getting caught with certain shots that you feel like you should be above getting caught by that level of shot, because it's a basic shot, to be honest. Like, you're in there getting hit with very basic stuff that no one's been able to hit you with before. Is this guy that much better than the level of competition you've been fighting? Or, did the moment get to you? Is your engine running on empty and you have to play it close to the chest because you've got no energy otherwise? There was just a lot of very weird things going on just to make you feel like, okay, well, the hype that you kind of had on your name is starting to look a little bit suspect. Then we get to obviously the controversial ending. And while I was on my live, I would say no, that to me looks like he's been pushed. Obviously, I don't know how, if the whole flipping over was, how much he got pushed over kind of thing. But I just remembered the fact of when Montana Love, pushed Steve Spark, like that was a DQ. So in my mind, I was thinking, oh, well, like Cameron's probably about to get disqualified now because he clearly initiated that contact, and he did overly aggressively push him into the ropes, which he didn't. At that point, he didn't kind of have to, especially the ref was there about, he was calling for the break. The flip over happens. Initially, you can kind of see both guys almost land on their heads. And then obviously you see both of them drop down. You think both of them look hurt. Ben looks obviously a lot more visibly hurt initially. Then they both sort of roll into the ring. And you see Cameron spring straight up, like, okay, he's hurt, but thought I'm going to get up. And then Ben just kind of stays down. And you're wondering what's going on here. Then you see them take off his boot and his sock, and he's complaining about something to do with the leg. And all of that kind of happens. And and they stop the fight. Now, I was a bit shocked that it got given, first of all, that it was a technical decision first, because like I said, I thought you push someone over the ropes, even though you went over with them, that's kind of a disqualification. But outside of that, Cameron getting given 3 rounds, I think probably probably one of the calls would have been, I guess, 4 rounds to 2 technically, and then maybe the other one was or it was 3 rounds to 2, and then maybe an even round on the other card, but both split. That whole thing just looked a bit weird, but I'll say the same thing that I said earlier. Like, there is no way that Ben Whitaker can't get away with not having the rematch, because the optics now and everyone talking about Ben, and saying, oh, Ben Whitaker and all this stuff, and he didn't fancy it, he wanted a way out and all of that stuff. It's like, you can't beat those charges, and it doesn't matter how long you wait, whatever the injury may be. Yeah, you can't wait and try to wait it out and then maybe come back in like 5-6 months. Like, people are gonna remember. And anyone that you face that is not Liam Cameron, unless you're going to throw yourself in like to one of the top 10 guys in the light heavyweight division, no one's going to allow you to get past this and beat the charges that they're leveling at you. And I said it earlier on, but unfortunately, if you look at it, just in the the general the general definition of what a quote unquote quit is. That's to no longer be willing to participate, to no longer to discontinue from a particular sport or particular job, etc., etc. Well, there's only 3 ways that you can come out of that fight without anyone sort of looking at you sideways. Well, 4, I guess, if the fight's over after 12 rounds, cool, there's that way, but you'd have to be knocked out, unconscious, rendered unconscious, to no longer be able to continue, the referee to stop the fight and to say that he's no longer going to allow you to continue, either him or the corner, or your corner has to throw in the towel, by which case you lose. But all of those are the only ways that you can beat a charge, because unfortunately, even if you've got a bad leg, you can still technically fight. You can be on one leg and put in a performance. David Hayes done it before with the ruptured Achilles. We've seen what was it? I think wasn't it Danny Wilson that fought with the dislocated shoulder for like 2 rounds and got that knockout. It was Danny Williams, isn't it? Yeah. So you've got that. You've also got people that have, you got George Groves dislocated his shoulder in the whole last round of the fight with Chris Eubank, and people, there are people that will fight on with injuries. And boxing, coming from that quote unquote gladiatorial sport, in the gladiators in the Roman times and stuff, like, you get a slash to the leg, you go down, you keep fighting until you either you get killed or you get beat into submission, to whereby the king or whoever announces that the other person's the victor. So I understand, obviously, not trying to fight on one leg, but ultimately, if you choose to do that, you have technically quit. You forfeited the bout. You've acquiesced to your opponent that you can no longer go on. So with all of that kind of being said, if he doesn't run it back, he's not going to beat the charges that people are leveling at him. And now, obviously, he's quote unquote a hype job, and he's got no power. And when the going got tough, he looked for a way out. All of that stuff. The only way to get rid of that is to run it back and deal with Liam Cameron in devastating fashion. And even if you do run it back, people are still going to say, yeah, but you didn't do it the first time. So there's always going to be that in the background. So it's not an easy situation to be in and to deal with. And funny enough, I said earlier, number one is like, I kind of hope he's got a really bad injury, which is a reason enough for him to be out. But I also don't want him to be injured, because I don't want him to lose a lot of time in his career with a very bad injury. But that's the only thing that's going to save him, is we find that he's got some mad fracture in his femur or something, or the ankle snapped on entry, or maybe when he was getting pushed over and he sprung off of it incorrectly, or it got jammed in between him and the security guard. Like, literally, that's the only way that we're going to get any kind of reprieve from the quit talks. And even then, like I said, because he would have still been able to stand on one leg, some people will still say, well, you could have carried on, you still chose not to. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but he's got to run it back. It's that simple.
Yeah, great summary there. Shout out to London Ball Out, Obianuli, Ahmed Ali. Shout out to Healer Dunfor. Shout out to Tony Pugilist in the building. Ryan Hutchinson, G Chain, big ups, Sajid. Make sure that you share this, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. What's your thoughts, Raf, on the situation? Because everyone's got a lot to say on this situation, even though it was only just 5 rounds completed.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Base said, but one thing he said in particular that stood out for me was it's a catch-22, because if you have the rematch and it goes all as well, it's still not completely written out, because then the goalposts will be moved in hindsight and people say, well, the first time you didn't do it, so even though you won the rematch, it's a bit of a catch-22. I think that's really worth highlighting, because it's not something that's specific to Whittaker Cameron either. That's something that I call it revisionism. We're living in the revisionist era, where after every fight, that's the metric you're judged on. in terms of your stock value. But I think the only other thing I'd add would be if you look at the overall motion from, because he almost did a 360. Let's not forget that. It was around about just cut off just before the full 360. His right ankle that was given as the reason, that was allegedly where the injury was, didn't actually make contact with the ring canvas or the security guard alike throughout that whole throughout that whole motion. What did happen was his left kneecap, as they were being flipped, got grazed by the right heel, the back of the boxing boot. It grazed his left kneecap, the left kneecap of Ben Whittaker, but his right ankle didn't actually make contact with anything. But there is a bit of a grey area because the television angle cuts off the bottom part of the ring canvas. So his right leg is hanging off the canvas. He could have hit something below, or maybe on impact. If you think about it, if you're doing a 360 flip like that, and then someone's hand, if it's a security guard or their body rushing in, then breaks the angle of you flipping like that, naturally any part of your body could go. But it's really hard to say from that angle. But rather than being speculative and hypothetical about what may or may not have happened in that part of the TV angle that was cut off camera-wise, there's nothing meaningfully conclusive that we can take from the footage shown that would indicate that there's a right ankle injury. But that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. On the flip, yeah, you don't see it out of shot, but it doesn't seem like he's hit anything. Initially, obviously, everyone thought that it must either be his back or the way, obviously, they landed on their head. But he went for the ankle, which was quite surprising. As Base said, there's been many fighters in the past. They fought with broken hands, torn rotator cuffs, like Floyd. Audley Harrison dislocated his shoulder in about the 6th round in a rematch versus Michael Sprott, a man who'd already iced him before, managed to battle on through it and managed to ice Michael Sprott in the 12th and last round to win the European title. You know, a lot of people give Audley stick, but there's a lot of times he has, you know, come through. He won the rematch against Danny Williams, knocked him out. So he has given the goods. As you see, Isaac Chamberlain, he dislocated his shoulder versus Wadi Camacho. Danny Williams against Mark Potter dislocated his shoulder. David Hay, as you know, Base mentioned, against Tony Bellew, he kept getting up, even though he clearly done his foot. Even he also even done his toe in the Vladimir Klitschko fight. Even though many people make fun of him, he still carried on through the 12 rounds. He just probably shouldn't have even used that as an excuse. Just get on with it. But either way, he carried on. So, you know, by the Warriors code, it would seem that Ben Whittaker did break that code on carry on, no retreat, no surrender, and just carry on even with an injury. But I don't know if maybe his preparation wasn't good. I don't know if the weight was bad. I don't know if it was the Saudi heat, even though it's not the peak summertime, but it's still hot out there, which is why he was tired from round 2, which is very alarming, you know, when you're going into a 10-rounder. And some say he was looking for, you know, a way out. I don't know. I don't know if an opportunity presented himself. I'm not sure what happened, but we've seen many a heavyweights. Dillian Whyte get slammed into ropes. We've seen Tyson Fury go into the ropes, and none of them just fold over the ropes that easily. Ben Whittaker's a good, you know, 75 pounds lighter than a lot of these heavyweights, and they don't go over the ropes like that. And the ropes wasn't that sagging where you would just fly over it that easily. That was kind of like a Shawn Michaels in Royal Rumble form.
To be fair, the ropes did look a bit low, to be honest, for the height of the guys in the ring, and they were very loose. I think you wouldn't have sagged over if they were tighter. Like, they looked very, very loose, and even in the fight after, the women said that they were very loose. So
yeah, okay. You there, Raf? Raf?
I don't think he can hear you.
Oh, is he? Oh, he's there, isn't it? He's there.
He's there, but you might.
Oh, he might have. Yeah, something's up with your volume, man. Like, he's going to come back in. But yeah, shout outs to everyone inside. What's G Chain saying here? Guys, he ran over a fan at the airport and smashed his eye. Who is he talking about? Smashed his iPhone. I don't know. He's talking. He might
Smashed his phone. He's talking about Ben Whittaker. He's saying he ran over a fan at the airport.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The whole moment was slow. He couldn't have been injured.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah. So we're just gonna have to see what comes out of that. Another thing, it's been a great time in boxing, especially with Riyadh season. But even before that, I'd say, as you guys pointed out, with Raf pointed out, Errol Spence, Terence Crawford. Obviously, we saw Devin Haney versus George Kambosos in Undisputed. So my question is, with the new era of boxing, has it become the undisputed era and moved on from the undefeated era? And what do you feel fans see as more important nowadays, the undefeated record or undisputed? Base, take it away.
I think at the minute, everywhere around the world apart from maybe America sees it as the undisputed era. Like, are you the best? Are you fighting the best guys? And I think more people, that's why, right, so when you're looking at boxing nowadays, right, and again, this goes back very similar to, like, the 70s, the 80s, 60s, and even the 90s to a degree. When two of the top guys in the division are fighting each other, fans expect a loss. Some fans expect someone to lose. Now, obviously, if one person loses every single big fight they're in, then you say, okay, yeah, you're not that good because you always lose the big fight. But if you're fighting the best, losses will happen. Therefore, if your title unifications are happening, the fans are invested because they want, all right, there's 4 belts, you consolidate them, now we know who the man is in the division. And I feel that more people are interested in that now. Also, obviously, if you lose, but you lose well, as poor as that sounds, like, you have a great loss, you give everything, you go out on your shield, or you push the other person extremely hard to the so maybe the brink of their powers, like, people aren't going to care that you took that L. So yeah, being undefeated is only looked at as an achievement now if you've got the accomplishments behind it to back it up. But in terms of, I don't think people care about the O as much now, because fights are happening and people are seeing, oh, well, you fought this guy that we thought was a quote unquote bum, and he beat you. Or, case in point, Jared Anderson and Martin Bakoli. Every American going would have never thought Martin Bakoli was anything at all, especially because he lost to Michael Hunter. Whereas almost every single person in the UK said, oh, that's a terrible matchup for Anderson. Bakoli's going to beat the brakes off him. And we saw what happened. So now you've got the American side trying to reevaluate, okay, how good is Anderson? But really and truly, it's about, well, how actually good was Bakoli, and how much did you underestimate? So now you're going to have, Bakoli's got more stock. So if he carries on winning or is in those 50-50 fights and does what he does, they're going to keep raising for him. But now if Anderson also gets some good wins back against good level opposition, maybe top 15, top 10, and has those hard fights or whatever, then his stock's going to go back up as well. So now that they're kind of getting used to not being the the minus 1,000 favorite in a fight or whatever, now that that's starting to change, especially with Riyadh season and a lot or more of these 50-50 fights, or at least very hard tests, we're going to see a lot more people lose their O's. But you know what, it's okay, because if they come back and they improve and get back in there and also have those good fights, people are going to be interested. And ultimately, if that then comes to undisputed afterwards, happy days.
Yeah. And Raf, what's your opinion on it as well? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure I agree with Base there. I think that in terms of, that culture of valuing O's and everything, I think that what we've seen, not exclusive to Riyadh season, but in America as well, Haney Ryan, Spence Crawford. We're undergoing a very slow cultural revolution where the wider public are understanding that it's not so much about having an undefeated record, as it's about the best fighting the best all the time. But given that the past 15 years have been going in the opposite direction, it's very difficult to rewind a public mindset or attitude towards boxing, particularly from a mainstream casual standpoint, overnight. So I would tread with caution when saying things like, it's just the Americans. I think personally in the UK, I mean, we saw it when Joshua, who's lost 3 times before, lost to Dubois, was it 3 weeks ago? And the hate and the stick he was getting online, and that's for a guy who's lost 3 times already, was really, really high. So, yeah, I don't think it's gone in the UK anywhere near to that degree. I still think we're going through that cycle of,
No, but Raf, sorry, I think it was the way he lost more so than the fact he lost, if you know what I mean. I feel like over here,
that
yes, well,
definitely
don't
as
get me
well.
wrong, we still don't get me wrong, we still like undefeated fighters, we still want that, but when you're fighting people that are worthy, I think people are more accepting of the loss, provided that obviously, you go out and you give it your all. Now that doesn't count for everyone, because then you have outliers. Someone, for instance, like Anthony Yard, for instance, he stepped up and everyone gives him credit for the step ups, but there's been nothing else in between for you to judge what kind of level he's at. And so you look at those losses a lot more harshly, because there's actually no real credible victories on the, within the resume after that. So I feel like it's one of them ones. As long as you're fighting in the fights that the people want to see more often than not, they'll forgive the losses. And also if you're giving your all in there. But sorry, carry on.
No, I mean, the Anthony Yard one is a good example that illustrates that point, but I still don't think we're even realistically based. I don't think we're even 50% of the way there in the UK of reversing that wider mainstream or casual mindset towards boxing, looking in from the outside and going, if a guy's lost his O, he's not quite what he used to be. Yes, with Anthony Yard, he lost to Kovalev 2019, Beterbiev 2022. But like you said, there wasn't enough activity in between or after, to be fair, because he hasn't fought a massive amount since Beterbiev to really judge where he's at levels-wise. But I still think that in the UK, there is very much a case of one loss when you're done syndrome. That's what I describe it as. And so I think that it's going to take, if you look at the wider dynamics of combat sports, not just boxing, it's going to take a lot of time, potentially at least around about 3 or 4 years, realistically, for boxing to completely, in the UK, America, and everywhere else, in my opinion, just from my lens, to fully do a U-turn on what they've traditionally understood a fighter taking a loss to mean. Whereas, because, for example, in the UFC and MMA, there's been a 10-year backlog and footprint of the best fighting the best, it's become normalized to lose. That sort of equivalent in boxing. Yes, Riyadh season's great. Yes, we've had 18 months of mega fights, but a 10-year footprint is what normalizes a wider public attitude or wider public mentality around what's considered acceptable or considered not so great for a fighter's career. I think the UFC have got that in MMA, but in boxing, we're making headway. Like you said, you made the example yourself of the Anthony Yard case. That is true, but if Anthony Yard hadn't lost, and now he's lost twice, if he'd faced Joshua Buatsi 4 years ago, I think there'd have been a lot more hype for that fight than there is now. And I think a massive part of that has to do with the undefeated record, but we can agree to disagree if that's just a difference of opinion, I guess.
Yeah, can't agree on everything. My opinion is we definitely are not in the UFC mindset, but as far as boxing goes, I think we have made in the past 10 months a very big transition in our mindset of, oh, you know, one loss and oh, he's washed, because people were saying that. I remember when Joshua lost to Ruiz, oh, he's washed. Yeah, he's washed. Someone loses straight away, oh, he's washed. He's washed. That wasn't the case when people were losing in the 90s and the 80s and even the early 2000s. But, you know, once the Mayweather effect did come about, it seemed like straight away one loss and you're done. But what I feel has happened, fortunately, with a lot of these fighters fighting the best now, and especially with Riyadh season, it's given an opportunity for people to have redemption songs. Where Daniel Dubois is a prime example. He lost to Joe Joyce. This guy's a hype job. He ain't gonna amount to nothing. He's a quitter. Then he's had a few fights. Lost to Usyk. Look, he's quit again. This guy's nothing. He's a bum. He's a journey. People say journeyman. People throw that word around heavy as well. But then when he's obviously come back in the Riyadh season and beat Jarrell Miller, Hergovich, and now Dubois, and everyone's like, oh my God, yeah, I always knew he had it in him. He just needed that self-belief. Do you know what I mean? So now it seems like people are kind of forgetting the two losses, whereas before people were really, really harping on about it. Another person who's had a great Riyadh season is Joseph Parker. Just before it,
Yeah,
he got splashed by Joe Joyce. And then he's come in, he's beat Deontay Wilder, he's beat Zilly Zhang, Big Bang Zhang, and now he's like a top contender. So it's like people just want to see great fights, and it seems less about, like, even with, for instance, Gerard Anderson, he's the latest hot prospect to have just been beaten by Martin Bakole. I'm not hearing people going, he's washed, he needs to forget it. He obviously needs to rebuild. People saying it was a bad matchmake. But normally something like that before, it'd have been like, yeah, he's a hype job. I knew he wasn't anything anyway. But people are not really talking like how they was talking, say, 2 years ago. Obviously, with UFC, it's just a given. People expecting people to lose, and they get back, and they get, many chances. But they fight a lot more frequent. Whereas I guess in the undefeated era, there was so much gaps in between fights. You kind of didn't have a chance to kind of, because obviously your last memory, as you say, you're only as good as your last fight. It takes so long to erase the memory of you getting beaten. Like Errol Spence, we haven't seen him since, unfortunately. It's like, it's a long lingering, like, now it's Fundora. Oh, yeah, man, I think he's washed, because it's been so long. But if you come back in about 3 months, 4 months, and get a good win, it's kind of like the song, what have you done for me lately? So what I think is, people do need to be more active, especially if you do lose. Not saying go straight back into a massive fight. Obviously, you've got to go back into a competitive fight, not fight some like joker. And I think people will be more accepting of you losing, especially the manner of you losing. And if you come back and fight a good fight, and yeah, I think it is changing. But as you said, it'll, for the actual proper casual armchair, like the guy down the pub, the guy down the cafe, the guy down the barbershop, it will take another couple of years for them to fully get out of that Mayweather effect, because Mayweather's still doing his exhibition, so he's still in their brain a little piece. So once he fully just like sits down and gets his cigar and whatever's originals going, then people will transition fully in boxing into a more of an MMA, or say a boxing in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s mindset. But I think it's going in the right direction. Also, yeah, well, I guess we all agree that the undisputed era is better for the sport than the undefeated one, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people saying, for instance, the undefeated era was fraudulent because people ducked a lot. I've seen a couple of comments mentioned talking like that. Undefeated era for me. Well, yeah, he's a big casual, so he likes that undefeated era. See, so it, as Raf said, it's some people, they still need to get out of that mindset.
By the way, Danny, on that note, I should also mention I've got 3% of battery left, so I'm going to be here
okay.
till the end, but I don't know when that end is going to be.
Oh
Sooner
yeah,
rather than later.
I've only got two more questions. All right,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
this one's for you actually, because you're a UFC man. Why is it you said Poatan is being, is what UFC or might be what UFC always wanted Israel Adesanya to become,
Yeah.
and why do you think he's potentially going to be the best fighter in combat sports history?
Okay, so if you backdate to Israel Adesanya coming into the UFC, he beat Romero, he beat Silva, he beat a lot of legends, Robert Whittaker, and then he became champion. Now, the thing is, there was a roadmap for the UFC they'd mapped out where in 2019, even there were provisional betting odds across bookmakers everywhere for John Jones versus Israel Adesanya. The weight, however, wasn't disclosed, but the general consensus was one day the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle will be solved at heavyweight. That's the last level of the video game, Jones and Adesanya. Now, Adesanya was supposed to go to 205 and John was meant to go to heavyweight. And then if Adesanya cleared out 205, then the plan would have been for Izzy to face John at heavyweight. Heavyweight's where the most money is made, boxing and MMA alike. Now, Izzy went to 205. He lost to Jan Blachowicz. He then had to come down back to middleweight, and he lost to Poatan. Then he lost to Sean Strickland. Then he lost to Dricus du Plessis. And the style that had essentially won him the title, he'd narrowed the tool set he used to get there, and he became less dynamic. Case in point being the question mark kick. There are a lot more teeps, a lot more low kicks, particularly to the lead leg when in southpaw, and his vocabulary of striking wasn't being used as much as it was in the early days. There was a lot less 360 spinning kicks, a lot less question mark kicks. Even the way he angled out of takedowns, he'd pivot off the rear leg and then switch to southpaw and then try and catch someone with a knee coming off the cage. His weaponry had been reduced from that to this, and he'd just been focused on polishing that up as much as possible with efficiency. If you look at what Israel Adesanya brings to the table, his dancing, the charisma, there's a whole package of superstar potential. He hit the ceiling and then he came back down, and then he hit the ceiling lower below that with a 185. And now the question about him going to heavyweight is impossible. Now, as a contrast with Poatan, he came to the UFC at 185, became a champion, but then Izzy knocked him out. But then he went to 205 and beat the guy Izzy lost to, Jan Blachowicz. And then Poatan went and beat multiple contenders and became world champion and made 3 defenses. And this is a statistic. In a 180-degree window, Poatan's now the only fighter in UFC history to have made 3 world title defenses. Not since Ronda Rousey has that happened in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And so, with that in mind, his also the way he's fighting and the knockouts it's producing, Adesanya became more and more detached from that. He became more of a back foot defensive fighter. As I mentioned earlier, less question marks, less question mark kicks, more teeps. Less spinning 360 kicks or 180 kicks, more low kick or a jabbing front kick to the stomach. The pool of tools was this wide to begin with, and it progressively, incrementally narrowed to that. But he became so good at that that that's all he needed to win fights. But now there's a lot more tape on him, and it's a skill set that's now easier to weaponize against him in 2023 and 2024 than it was in 2018. He was a lot more of an unknown quantity. Poatan, however, has come in late to MMA, and he's essentially stolen Izzy's thunder in that respect, where he's now become in position for that John Jones fight, 185 champ, 205 champ, and now if he beats, he hasn't got a fight scheduled since he beat Khalil, but if he beats Ankalaev, then you presume, should Jones come through Miocic, the Aspinall-Jones fight is less likely, and so that would, by all indications, point towards Jones-Poatan at heavyweight. So that's one angle. But at the same time, what was the second part of your question about becoming the greatest fighter ever?
In combat sports, yeah.
Okay, I hope I can get this in before my battery dies. Okay, if we look at combat sports as an overall conglomerate, so not isolating at boxing, MMA or kickboxing, Muay Thai, none of those as a conglomerate. Poatan's a glory kickboxing world champion, and within his first 10 MMA fights became a 2-weight UFC champion. That hadn't been done before in history, and there's never been a 3-weight UFC champion. The general consensus was when Conor McGregor became the first ever 2-weight division champion in 2016, when he beat, my mind's gone blank, Eddie. He beat Eddie in 2016 and Aldo the year before. The general consensus was because the weight disparity at the lower weight divisions is a lot smaller and narrower, 135, 145, 155, it would be easier at the lower end of MMA for a fighter to become the first ever 3-weight champion UFC's produced. Poatan's done it the harder way in that the weight categories are 20 pounds apart between heavyweight, between heavyweight, light heavyweight, and middleweight. He went from 185 to 205, and then if he goes to heavyweight, there's a lot more weight that's being jumped, and there's a lot less relativity. Whereas if someone like, for example, Ilia Topuria, who's the current 145 champion, if he goes to 155 and beats Islam, and then he wins at 170, look at the gap in weight, 25 pounds between 3 weight divisions. It's easier, relatively. With Poatan, he's going from 185 to 205, and then presumably to something like 230 or 230. That's around a 40 pound weight jump. It's almost double what someone like Ilia Topuria would do in that sense. So, with Poatan, I think that if he becomes a 3-weight world champion, he is one of the greatest combat sports athletes of all time. But there's 2 sides to every story. His elite level wrestling, and I'm talking specifically defensive grappling on the floor, hasn't been tested yet. Someone like Magomed Ankalaev would be a good litmus test for us to see where he is truly as a mixed martial arts athlete as opposed to a striker. Because taking striking as an individual discipline is one thing, but what's MMA? Mixed martial arts. You want to see how jiu-jitsu marries up with wrestling, marries with striking, and how they infuse all together to get a more broader picture of how good a fighter truly is. So on that basis, he'd qualify as one of the best MMA fighters ever, but not necessarily the best, because he needs to fight those guys. And also over a long period of time, longevity. Case in point, GSP, John Jones, even someone like Khabib, who was there for less than 29 fights because those happened in Dagestan before. In the UFC, if you think back to the days of fighting Al and guys like that, that was 2013, 2014-ish. His scope of opponents between now and then was mainly strikers. His best wins, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, McGregor, all strikers. So that was where the intrigue was about Tony and Khabib back then, but that never transpired. So that's worked against Khabib's legacy. So in the case of Poatan, if Poatan enters that GOAT list, it would limit how high he could be, because very much like Khabib, Poatan would be relegated a little bit because he didn't answer those questions asked of him. And Daniel, I've just seen I am on 1% now, so I'd rather say goodbye properly. And also it's the first time talking to Base as well, properly, than just being cut. But it's been a pleasure, guys, and I'd love to do this again.
100%. We'll get it done, man. Salute to you.
Likewise, so
man.
guys, just so you can follow Raf is at Elusive 2.0. He is a boxing, he does analysis, breakdowns. Many of the videos you might have seen on YouTube where he breaks down the intricacies of fights and movements and tactical breakdowns, analyst on boxing. So make sure you follow him at Elusive 2.0 on YouTube, please. And also at Elusive 2.0 on X/Twitter/TwitX, as Base the Kid says. So please make sure you follow him at Elusive 2.0. Raf Miera, thank you very much for gracing.
Thank you for having me. Thank
and
you
we'll definitely get you back on and do this again, man. So much appreciated.
100%. And likewise, thank you guys for having me, and I look forward to the next time. Probably likelier in person, but we'll do one step at a time, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. So, take care of yourselves, guys.
All right. Danny, what was the last question you had?
Yeah, the last question I had for you, what did you want, the UFC one?
No. I don't watch enough. I don't watch enough of it as I used to give those comments.
Yeah. So the last question, it was we're going to be up to the time. So, what did you think about the Junto Nakatani fight today against CP Freshmart? And what's your thoughts on his fight with potentially with Naoya Inoue, especially now his brothers got beat, which was sort of the stumbling block, which he was used as kind of the gatekeeper to him.
Right. So the fight today, he did what he needed to do. He didn't look great in the fight, but he looked good enough. Although to be honest, he didn't need to look great because Pech, what is it? Pech saw Chitpantana, as they call him, or Tassalat, Passalad. He's got like 3 or 4 different names. But the thing is, his record is like an amazing record to look at until you actually delve into it, which is why I think I said that Junto Nakatani was going to knock him out within 6-7 rounds. He fought a lot of debutants over in Thailand, had a lot of 4-rounders, a lot of 6-rounders. He's got power, but I guess he was attacking low-hanging fruit for a lot of the period. But also what I will say and what I will give him credit for is, even though he didn't have like the greatest of opposition throughout his career, he was very active. I think he was fighting like 8, 9, 10, 11 times a year. Hence why he got to 76-1 with 53 KOs. So yeah, Junto did what he needed to do. In terms of the quote-unquote stumbling block, I still think Junto, he hasn't unified in any division yet that I can remember. He's only ever had 1 belt. You've got to do, don't get me wrong, I'm all for the Inoue fight, but you've still got to do something. So whether or not you've unified with Takuma, now you got Seiya in there. Satsumi has also got a belt. Who else at bantamweight has got belts? I know that what's it called? I think Chocolatito is supposed to be mandatory for a belt in the bantamweight division as well. And I know that one other Japanese guy's got a belt there. So realistically, he's got a bit more work to do. And as long as if he unifies, I'm not saying he's got to go undisputed, but unify in the division, like do that, show people think you are the dominant force, but prove your dominance in the division. Like do that, and then I feel like you'll be you'll be definitely worthy of that fight. Not that he's not now anyway, but in terms of the fight, look, I'm not really gonna give any predictions on it, but like the fight has to happen before Inoue retires, and he's already said he's not in any rush to go to 126. So as long as Junto can get his work done in the next 12 to 18 months, they'll see each other.
Yeah, the last guy is the IBF champion Ryosuke Nishida.
That's the one. Yeah,
IBF champion. He's a 9-0, only 1 KO. So, boy, that's interesting. But
I remember when he won the belt. Actually, yeah. It's not just him. The WBA guy is, because obviously that's not going to be on BoxRec, but on Box Live it will tell you the WBA has still got They got a champion. It's another. The Japanese have got all 4 belts. I just can't remember his name off the top of my head. And I should know it.
Yeah, Nishida, he beat Emmanuel Rodriguez. So I remember that the WBA guy, top of my head, I can't figure out. Let me get to the quickly. See if I can find it here because BoxRec ain't gonna help us.
I'm going on. I'm on Box Live at the minute. I'll find it.
Well, WBO, you said that's
no
your
WBA. It's Takeshi. That's it. Takeshi Takai. Yoshiki Takai. He's 10-0. He's got the no. So he's got the WBO. Rasuki Nishida's got the IBF. Junto's got the WBC, and Satsumi's got the WB. Oh, Satsumi's WBA. I thought he had the other belt. Yeah, so that's right. Takai is the one I was thinking of.
WBO. Okay, yeah. Because I know Tony Pugilis. He was shocked that Sasumi beat Takuma Inui the other day, but I
wasn't shocked, but I did think Takuma would come through. But shout out to Punch Perfect, Jamie Bourne. He basically predicted that Sasuke would win through activity, and then when the fight basically played out, and Takuma just fought the wrong fight. He fought a fight he shouldn't have been fighting. Like he thinks he's become this banger recently, and he's always wants to be in the pocket and trying to wear people out that way rather than just boxing, and it just it backfired on him on this one, and he just didn't work enough. He thought he could place punches, but the activity on the other side was a bit too much for him.
Yeah. So who have you got winning if Nakatani does step up and fight Inui? Who you got?
You know, I'm not going to tell you that. That's a basis pick special.
Oh yeah, sorry. Well, I can tell you my opinion.
Okay.
I'm going with my guy Nakatani. But listen, it's a great fight. And yeah, I look forward to that. That would be a big fight, and hopefully, well, I don't really care. Well, I don't really care what the Americans are going to say. They're going to say it's rubbish anyway. But I think it's a great fight, and I think most of those over in Europe and in the far East Asia think it's a great fight. So I look forward to it. But yeah, man, thank you once again for coming on and blessing the show. You know, Bastradamus. Make sure, guys, that you follow Base. There we go. Make sure you follow Base on YouTube. Subscribe to his YouTube channel, Base the Kid at the Hardcore Casual. Also on Twittex at B_A_S_E. The Kid, or you can type it in straight away. He will come up because he is the #1 person with that name on Twittex. So yeah, anywhere else? Have you got a TikTok yet?
I've got a TikTok, yes, basethekid.thc, but I haven't posted on there in a little while. But yeah, I use it. Base the Kid, basically, Base the Kid on any social platform that you could think of. I'm sure I'm on there in some form or fashion, whether I use it or not. Everything except Snapchat. With that being said, though, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I'm gonna run over to Monday Night Smoke because there's a few people that need to get some just desserts. But Danny, thank you.
All right. And there you have it, guys. It's Danny Glover. It's Base the Kim. It was it's Danny Glover. It's Base the Kid. It was Raf Miera. And remember, guys, persistence beats resistance. You know where it is.
Salute.
How am I not ended the stream? I need to end the stream. Sorry, guys.